Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you are across the pond. Thanks for joining us today on what is always a fun session because I get to show you new stuff that is coming in Capture One, or has come rather, I should say. So if you're not aware, there was an update that came out today. So for clarity, let's go over to Capture One, and we're just going to say about Capture One so you can see what's happening. So whoops, no, I don't want dictation. Thank you very much, Apple. You can see the build I'm currently running on is version 15.2. So that's what came out today. More on updating and whether you're a Fuji or a Nikon or a Sony user, because there's some things coming with that. But really this update focuses around a couple of things: a new Keystone tool, improvements on Apple M1 Silicon, and a few other changes as well. So let's actually look at a summary. That will be easier. So as I said, the main thing is focused around this new Keystone tool, the Apple Silicon M1 improvements, the auto rotate, which came out with the launch of Capture One 22. We've made a few tweaks and adjustments to that. More on that later too. Some usability changes to cropping with different aspect ratios. And also some usability changes with accessing some drop-down menus, which just makes it a lot easier to find. New default sorting, which might sound like a small thing, but it's been a long requested feature. And also some changes to Capture One Live as well, how long you want that duration to be, as an example. So let's dive straight into it and have a look at the Keystone tool. So let's bring Capture One back up. So let me pull out the Keystone tool here. Now the design has changed a little bit. So, well, I say a little bit, a lot to be honest. So we've now got the addition of an auto functionality, which is fantastic because that will probably deal with 80 to 90%, perhaps more, of cases where you would want to adjust Keystone. We've still retained the old method of doing things by placing guides. We'll look at those in a second. And probably most importantly, or secondly to the auto, is the addition of this new slider called Skew, which we can look at as well. So one of the issues with the previous implementation of the Keystone tool was that sometimes when you made a correction, you wouldn't get your perfect square. You would get, if I try and make a trapezoid, you would get more of a trapezoid shape. So not a perfect square. It didn't happen all the time, but occasionally there was a correction that wasn't handled as well as it could be. So now let's just pop this Keystone back in. What we can do is let's just change that back to auto here. So now we've got the addition of this auto button in to the right hand side of those guides. Looking at this picture here, it's a typical shot that you might take of some architecture. Of course, if we don't have the requisite tilt shift cameras, or we can't get enough height, then you're going to have to point your camera up and then you get your falling down building syndrome. Now what we do now is detect the vanishing point with a bit of simple AI technology to then anticipate the correction that's needed. So if I just hit auto, so back over here on this button, then you see the vertical is corrected quite nicely. Let's just crop that a little bit differently as well. So now you can see the whole building. Great. And notice that was super quick as well. This shot, which is also handy for this particular example, we're also not, if you like, parallel to the buildings either. So we've got some horizontal keystoning that needs to be done. So let's just reset the rotation and my crop as well. And let's change the auto to the 4-way keystone. Now by default, auto will always be on vertical keystone changes unless I physically change it by clicking on this button here. Now I can still move the guides around, but let's actually just go for auto and click auto like so. So now you can see Capture One has done both axes. Let's just come out of the crop view and has corrected that very, very nicely. And notice that it's super speedy as well. So that was just 0.01 of a second to make that change. pretty simple to understand. If we go back into the sliders, we can also see that the values have been punched in here as well, which is great. There are some other applications which don't give you that option. They might do an auto correction, but they don't give you the ability to manually adjust it, because there could be times when you do want to tweak it a little bit. So I mentioned this skew slider that we had before. If I just do a stupid adjustment with this, you can see what it's doing. So it just allows us to get that perfectly square shape, which we couldn't do all the time with the previous sliders. Another change, which was all based on feedback from you guys, was to change this, which is the default amount. The default amount used to be this, which was 80, which wouldn't give you a completely perfect correction, but maybe a slightly more natural correction. But we appreciate that for our customers who are using this for architectural interior work, then it's important that you get the perfect result at the end of it. Okay, so let's just have a look at some other examples. I'm not going to go through 50 examples and press a load of buttons, because I think you would tire of that very quickly. But this is also quite a nice example. And this is a TIFF file, so it doesn't have to be a raw file. It works on JPEGs and TIFFs. If we just change, well, actually, let's do the full auto for this, like so. And then we can crop this one a bit different. It's quite an extensive correction, as you can see. Let's pull that around there. But if we look at our doors, super nice and straight, nice level railings, nice level and straight verticals as well. And again, that was a nice quick correction, so you can see the difference if I just reset that, keeping that crop, what it's doing, like so. So brilliant. As I said, 80–90% of cases you should be able to solve just using the auto button. If you do want to go traditional, then it's pretty much the same as it was before. So if I just grab this example and bring up my lines, we changed the design of the lines a little bit because they got thicker, but it was maybe a bit too thick. So now we can do exactly the same as before, pull these around, align them with our horizontals or verticals, and then we can say apply in the middle. Great correction once again. It will use the skew if necessary for that. But I think you can see that's a lot more time consuming than simply just pressing auto. Does also work on a batch, which is nice. So I'm just going to reset everything on here in case there's any crops and adjustments I don't know about. But we've got a bunch of different adjustments here. So if we just do a vertical auto and all of that, and then you'll see after a few seconds, a little bit progress, there's all the adjustments like so. So a dramatic increase to your workflow, or a reduction in the time taken. Good question from Wesley. Could it be used to auto-correct artwork to correct for parallelism issues? That's a tough one to say. Yeah, absolutely. No problem whatsoever. So it doesn't have to be a building. It can be anything that requires, going from not quite square to square. So that would work really, really nicely. Like if we imagine this to be your artwork, let's just reset all of that. It's kind of squarish. I know it's not perfect, but if we say auto, then that squares that up quite nicely. So yeah. Good question from Klaus. What's the apply camera keystone? So on some phase 1 cameras, not 5.1 cameras, phase 1 cameras, the accelerometer in the camera records the angle and position of the camera at time of capture, and we can use that data to correct for keystone. So this button won't necessarily work on a lot of these pictures because they're not shot with phase 1, but that's why that option is there. If also you're doing an auto on photos in general, so let's pick an image to pick on. Let's go for this one. Let's reset everything. So under auto adjust, this menu looks slightly different now. They're check boxes as opposed to just a tick next to the name. This is faster to turn on and off exactly what I wanted to do. And you can also include Keystone as part of the automatic correction. So this photo, we've got exposure, contrast, high dynamic range, levels, rotation, and Keystone all in the auto adjust. So if I click auto like so, then we've got our adjustment. Now for this particular shot, I imagine it might benefit from having the horizontal and vertical as well. So if I hit auto, that will straighten it up quite nicely. So this auto adjust can now throw in that Keystone adjustment too. All right, what's next? I'm just checking I haven't missed anything from Keystone. So let's check the notes, and I think we're pretty good to go. But I hope you can see that will be a very nice improvement to your workflows. As I said, for reduction in time, accuracy is pretty awesome. It doesn't necessarily have to be, let's just reset this shot, doesn't necessarily have to be as a subject where there's really obvious lines. So on something like this where we've got, you know, a lot more ornate stuff going on next to those lines, I can still say, let's do this auto quite nicely, and it's corrected pretty well. So don't think that you need to have super perfect lines everywhere. Like this shot, if I reset that and we say auto, nice job, even though we've got trees surrounding it. Part of the problem of trying to place lines manually is that, like in this situation, I'm not entirely sure where the end of this wall finishes because there's a gravestone in the way. So I kind of have to guess or make my best guess where I think the line of the wall is going to follow. And the same here, we've got a bit of a bend in the back wall. So it's laborious and time consuming placing those kinds of lines. So if the AI can do it for us, so much the better and much, much faster. Okay, so that was Keystone tool redesign. So give that a go yourself and try it out. So now we've got some Apple Silicon improvements, I would say. So, or general user improvements, but let's start with the Apple Silicon things. So I just need to switch to a different bunch of images and let's go. So, come out of this shot. So Capture on 22, or I think it was earlier on with 21, had native support for M1 systems or M1 Silicon, Apple Silicon. Since then, we've made some more optimization, and then now on this release, we've done a bit more optimization as well. Couple of things that I can show you in a second is related to the import process. So preview generation being much, much faster. So it was already a little bit quicker on Windows as an example, and then poor Mac was falling behind. So now this brings us up to on par, if not even a little bit faster. So we have a look at that in a second. But there's also a couple of improvements made to Luma masking, feathering masks, and also refining masks. So let's just throw a quick Luma mask on this shot. So we're going to start with a new field adjustment layer. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to turn on our grayscale mask so we can see exactly how the mask looks when we create our Luma range. So if we turn on our Luma range, the first thing Capture One has to do is calculate the mask based on the photo there. And that's already happened. That used to be a scroll wheel that would whirl away down here while it calculated. In the time it took for that dialog to open and for me to move it, then it was ready. So now let's squeeze our Luma range down, and then you can see it's nice and responsive and examining the data at a much faster rate than it was before. Now, adjusting the Luma range, the performance wasn't too bad and you could do it, but when you came to adjusting radius and sensitivity, it wasn't as fast as it could be to give you the best experience, if you like. So especially if we want to bump up our radius, and what we're doing here is controlling how the edges fit between where we're not masked and where we are masked. So do I want to have like a very feathered edge, or do I want to have something a lot more refined like this? Now, doing this previously, there was a little bit of a delay in it updating, and it kind of made the process a little bit slow and laborious. So now I can adjust my Luma range perfectly and my radius and see what happens pretty much as I adjust those sliders. So now we can say apply, come out that mask, and I can fix my hazy stuff going on in the background like so. So a really nice performance improvement there. Talking about refining and feathering, similar kind of operation really. If we get our furry guy here, I'm just going to draw a rough mask around the edge. So if I do a really super rough job of picking this guy out, hairs and all, and then right click to fill that mask. Let's look at it as a grayscale mask once again. Shortcut Option M to see that. And now if I right click and say refine mask, then again the time it took me to move that dialog and adjust, can pretty much see, okay, let's do a better job of cutting around that guy, apply that, and now I'm free to add my adjustments to him alone, or her. I think it's a male. I won't examine closely, but pretty sure it's a male. Again, much faster. I think it was 3 or 4 times faster, something like that. And equally, if you are feathering a mask, which can be very handy if you've drawn a mask which is maybe a bit too hard around the edges. So let's grab a brush again, and we're going to draw around the outside of our beehive. Nice tip, if you want to draw straight lines, hold your shift key down and just click once, and then we can draw straight lines like so, which can be handy if you're drawing around a square shape like this. Once again, I can right click to fill our mask like so. And if we look at the grayscale mask once again, bit hard on the edges, right click, feather mask, and then we can adjust that to make it a little bit softer or how it was. So let's go for something like that. So now we've got our feathered mask. If I make any changes to that, just want to brighten that up a little bit and add some contrast, then it's going to be much less obvious around the edges, where our hard mask wouldn't have looked quite so nice. Let's have a look at some questions. I see lots have been coming in, so sorry if I haven't paid attention to you. Box88 said, should be fine on square pack shots. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be a building, an interior or anything like that. It can equally be something square. Don't know what's going to happen with this beehive. Probably nothing. Let's try it. Oh, there we go. Square beehive. That wasn't rehearsed, honest, but I thought it was worth the risk to try it. But there we go. So square pack shot, yes, that will work quite nicely. Okay, the question, super impressive. Thanks, Philip. Nice to see you. Good work on Keystone. Thanks, barbers. Must pop in for a haircut one day. And what's the shortcut key from Carlos? So if you look up here, display grayscale mask, Option M or Alt key, as you might know it. It's a very handy feature. Okay, the last Apple M1 performance change, let me just check, or 2 more things actually. Fuji X-Trans files. Do I have one here? Oh yeah, this is a Fuji X-Trans file as it happens. So the X-Trans format is obviously a little bit different to 99% of all other cameras out there. Requires a little bit more decoding if you like, which was not quite at the same performance as a Bayer Mosaic camera if you like. So that's been improved, and what you'll find is just, you know, zooming into pictures, panning around on the RAW format. What I've found in particular, sometimes the color editor would be a bit sluggish to respond on RAW files. Now that's, you know, much better, and quite often the picture would stutter a bit and redraw. So all of that stuff's been improved dramatically for Fuji RAW files as well. Also preview generation, actually there's no point me importing photos, that would be boring for you to watch, but if I just say regenerate previews and bring up the dialog, where's my dialog box? Oh, it's over here. Oh, it's done already, sorry. So it's much faster to regenerate those previews, which is great. So I can do that again. Let's see if I can grab it quickly. There we go, pretty much. Oh, done. Let's see, regenerate previews. It was actually too quick to actually bother opening the activities. So much faster. Even though it's a background task, and I've said this many times, you don't have to wait for it to finish. But I know if you want to browse quickly through all the pictures, you know, rapidly, just going back and forth with your cursor keys, then of course that is faster if the previews are generated. But now with that process being much quicker, you saw it did those, regenerated those 4 previews in a blink. That's going to save you a bit of time when you're working with big collections as well. Let's see. Oh, we're very jealous, Ed, as you've got a Mac Studio. Yeah, it's definitely going to help speed that along as well. Jim, have we given you a reason now to buy your Apple Silicon? It's, you know, really, and if anyone from Apple is listening, apologies in advance, but I've always, you know, regularly updated my Apple equipment because it's, you know, part of the job, and always updating from one Intel platform to another. The theory would be just go big, you know, pack it with as much RAM and graphics card power as you could to get the most performance and experience. And when the brand new shiny laptop would arrive, you would be a little bit disappointed that it wasn't the quantum leap in performance that you were hoping for the money that you spent. Now, certainly with the Mac Studio, there's actually no point as a photographer to go big or go home in that respect. There's no point putting all the graphics power in there as possible, all the memory. You know, it's not really necessary. Yes, if you want to render 6 tracks of 8K movies at the same time, fine, go ahead. But for you and me who are editing and exporting, the Mac Studio, you know, relatively basic configuration is a huge quantum leap above what you could access before, especially on a laptop or a Mac Mini, and even the Mac Pro Intel to some extent. So it's well worth the investment. The value for money is so much better. Anyway, what's next? Just check my lists. Let's have a look at a little basic usability thing, and you probably saw a sneak peek of it already. Let's go back to our Keystone corrected beehive. That's hilarious. These downward arrows here, and you'll see them up here as well, and also in auto adjust. Previously, to get to the sub menu, if you like, you had to press and hold on these down arrows, which, even though it was for, I don't know, quarter of a second or something like that, it's still an annoyance of a delay, if you like. So now you can just tap the arrow and then you're straight into these various options. Same for here. If I wanted to shift to my Keystone vertical tool or whatever, or my horizontal tool without going into the app, then into the tool, sorry, then I could do so myself. So a small little update to those different, or to access the submenus of those tools. Same for this one, and it pops up in a few other places as well, maybe in export, I can't remember. But anyway, where you find a little downward arrow, you will now be able to access it faster. Cropping, let's have a look at that one. So let's bring up our crop tool. Let's crop around our beehive like so. If I right click, I can bring up my aspect ratios. So let's go for, I don't know, a 2:3 aspect ratio, and I'm going to crop on our gentleman here. Now, if I think, you know what, I would prefer a different aspect ratio, when I right click and change that, so let's go to 4:5 as an example, you see the crop changes immediately. So I don't have to touch the edge of the crop to get it to change. So once again, if I go back to 2:3 or whatever, then the crop aspect ratio changes immediately, but the center of the crop is locked onto that point of the photo. So it won't shift your crop about the center, it will be in exactly the same spot. Because otherwise you had to go in, change your crop ratio, kind of touch the corner of the crop to get it to move, and then you could recrop. So just a slight annoyance more than anything else. Next option. Two more things to talk about. Let's just come out of our Keystone beehive. Capture One Live. If you're not familiar with Capture One Live, then please do so. So you'll see it up on the toolbar here. What Capture One Live allows you to do is to share a collection, so like a folder or an album of pictures, across the internet with live interaction in terms of changing the star rating or color tag. So let's just get my viewer toolbar back a second. Sorry, viewer toolbar. Oh, my screen's off the bottom. I thought, why can't I see my viewer toolbar? Which is strange. Let's open this up. Labels, that's what I'm looking for. That's better. Okay, I was losing my mind. I thought, why can't I see these? And I turned them off. Anyway, so Capture One Live allows you to share a collection across the internet with live interaction so that your client, customer, friend, whatever, can rate the photos. Now, previously, if we just go into Capture One Live, and let's just share this one. Let's go for this collection. Now we can set a different expiry time. So by default, it was just 7 days. So we've added a longer time up to 2 weeks and a shorter duration of only 1 day. So if you wanted to have an extra long session, and we can start sharing that, let's just copy that link and bring up Safari and pop that in here. Then you can see we've got our Capture One Live session like so. Let's put our beehive at 5 stars, and now you can see that's instantly synced back. So just giving you that extra flexibility of either a very short period or a very long period. We know, of course, some of our clients aren't super fast at getting back to us. Okay. Almost the final. I think it's the final. Let's go to our preferences. If we look in the general tab, we've got a new option here under the browser. So this is changing the behavior of the browser here, like so. Let's just get a bigger collection of photos back. So this option up here, date or name. So that decides how your pictures are sorted. Now, by default, it used to be on name by default, and it wasn't a sticky option. So if I was to change it for my current catalog or session, when I created a new one and imported some pictures, it would be back to the previous option, which would be a little bit annoying. So now you can set your own default sort by and which direction you want to go in, as that was just one operation if you didn't like the default that you had to change each time. So that's a very welcome addition. Great. Okay, let's look at your questions. Let's see. Just looking for some. Eric, using the auto keystone with the auto adjust feature, is it possible to have both the vertical and horizontal as well? Yeah, absolutely. So it depends. If you're talking about, let's just open up any old picture. If you're talking about auto adjust up here, it's only vertical by default. Because generally, looking at most cases, what we require to adjust is just the vertical, if you like. So if you wanted to do a batch, so if I just reset everything like so, we could do a, let's just reset all of that. If we did a batch auto adjust of all these parameters like so, so that would do everything on the entire batch of pictures, then it would only do the verticals. if I found a shot, okay, where I wanted to do horizontal and vertical, like, I don't know, let's try this one, like so, then I would have to go in and hit the button myself to be able to do it. But as I said, most photos generally need this adjustment, not both. Let's see. Just checking. David says, what can you do in 22 that you can't do in 21? Quite a lot, actually. You can stitch panoramas, you can blend HDR, you've got the new Keystone tool. There's a bunch of performance enhancements for asset management. You can view the contents of subfolders, Keystone tool, as I said, some UI changes and so on. The list goes on. And of course, support for the latest OSs and so on. Does that change existing collections, Ed? No, it doesn't. So it won't mess up any of your existing as far as I'm aware. It's going to be when I create a new catalog or session, it will set up the browser as that. But if I then change it to something else, like rating or whatever, it's not going to change it back when I open it up in Capture One. Okay. Few of these. What about Capture One for iPad? It's coming, don't worry. So the process is going to be, we've had lots of you sign up for the beta release. So many that we had to close it, or we actually ran out of spots. So that's a positive problem. So what will happen is when it's ready for beta testing, which isn't far off, then you will receive an email inviting you to beta test as well. There's no point me telling you when that's going to happen, because as with beta testing, it's always a bit of a moving target. Could be tomorrow, could be 3 months or whatever. It's not going to be 3 months, don't worry, but it's a beta test, so of course it relies on it being ready for that. So we know you're anxious to have it, so just have patience and it will be with you as soon as humanly possible. Last thing to talk about, as Ben has triggered my memory, I need to go to the homepage and download. Yes. So if you want to update, just log into your account at captureone.com and you'll find it in your account area where you can download the application and just replace it. For those of you who are on Capture One Pro for Fuji, or Capture One Pro for Nikon, or Capture One Pro for Sony, you are now entitled to an upgrade depending a little bit on your license type and the version you have. So if you are subscribing, all you need to do is go and download with the method I just said, use the same license key, and you now get the access to Capture One Pro as before. If you had a perpetual license, so not a subscription, you will have received an email today. So check your email and there'll be a code in there so you can upgrade for free. Very important, with instructions how to do so. If you're on an older version of Capture One, say 21, and not on a subscription, then if you look in the store, you'll already see a discount for you to upgrade to version 22. But that's only valid until the 18th of April. So if you want to jump on that, I would do that as soon as possible. So once again, if you're a subscriber, just go and download, use the same license key. If you have a perpetual license, go to the upgrade store, use the coupon that was emailed to you today. If you're on an older version, check the store. There's already a discount waiting for you, but only until the 18th of April. Okay, so I hope that's clear for you, but it does mean if you're on Capture One Pro for Fujifilm, Nikon or Sony, you're now not restricted to those manufacturers. You can edit photos from any camera, DNG files from any camera, your iPhone shots, etc. So go ahead and take advantage of that freebie. Klaus was asking another popular question, support for the HE compressed RAW files of the Nikon Z9. So that's a question for Nikon really. The reason behind that is that Nikon uses Intopix, a Dutch company that has built the very impressive compression algorithm for it, but currently there is no SDK that works on M1 architecture. So if we wanted it to work on M1, then we would have to use the Intel based SDK inside a native application, which isn't the best performance for you guys. So hopefully it's not too far off, but we are relying on Interpix to deliver that for us as well. Let's see. We're going to take, how are we doing for time? Actually, I thought this would only be 15 minutes, but there we go. I'm just going to check. Oh, good comment there from Philip. Stay tuned for the iPad version. I'm one of the alpha testers and the app will be amazing. Glad you think so, Philip. I have given a preview of it, so if you check our YouTube channel, you can see exactly what Philip is talking about. Let's see. I think that's probably it. Falco Hole. Is it planned that Speed Edit tool will be extended? I use it very much. If you haven't tried Speed Edit, just look over his long comment here. Do so. It's a brilliant way to edit. All you need to do is press and hold one of the available keys for Speed Edit. I'm holding Q on my keyboard and no exposure is showing at the bottom, and I can just drag anywhere on my trackpad and adjust one or many pictures. Getting to the end of your question, why don't you integrate all the controls? I see that levels control in the RGB channels are not integrated. I thought they were. Let me check. Maybe we can solve that for you right now, or I'm imagining things. So if we look in keyboard shortcut, we've got levels, RGB, highlight, shadows. So if that's what you meant, then they are already there. So do check that out. But yeah, it could be interesting to add more adjustments to Speed Edit, but I'm very happy to hear you're finding it useful. Great. So thanks for joining today, everybody. I hope you found that useful with super nice, exciting additions to Keystone tool, as I'm just demonstrating again with this picture. Do try it out yourself. If you're on an older version and curious, you can of course download the trial as well. And as this is a dot release, as in 15.2, the trial is reset. So if you've already tried a trial of Capture One and you want to have another go, now you can. So even if you're on version 20 or 12 or whatever, and you've tried a 22 trial, that's now reset. So give it another try out those improvements, and then hopefully we can encourage you to upgrade. If you are watching on YouTube, and hello to those on Facebook, don't forget to subscribe, and if you hit that little bell there, I'll get it one day, then you'll always be reminded when we go live. You'll get a 30-minute warning. And on Friday, I'm going to be looking at our new style pack with Paul Reefer. So he's the brains and the designer behind that. So he's built us a style pack specifically for cityscapes, landscapes, in different lighting situations. Great pack. So join me with Paul so you can see exactly how to use it. Thanks again all, and I hope to see you Friday with me and Paul. Otherwise, I will see you another time in the future. So take care and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye now.